It's Friday, June 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. I want to start off this one with something from Dreams. Of course, Dreams is still apparently going to be coming out later this year, or sometime this year, within the year of 2018. But check it out. This guy actually made Sony's president of Worldwide Studios, Shuhei Yoshida, in Dreams, kind of like sculpting it, you know, and it looks really, really good and super accurate. Just kind of makes me think that, yeah, this game certainly has crazy, limitless potential in terms of creativity, but I still can't picture this game coming out and selling that many units, and that's the only real fear I have for Dreams. Not necessarily the quality of the game, but just a slight reminder for everybody, yes, this game actually is still supposedly coming out this year. Alright, so this news story, this is one of those things where I saw this and I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing, you know? Because, like, we haven't really seen this in a very long time, but Sony announced earlier this week PlayStation Hits for PS4 is coming. So this is going to be a catalog of discounted PlayStation 4 games that are sporting red cases. So, of course, still the box art says PS4 in blue, but the actual physical case won't be blue, it'll be red. And a select catalog of games like Bloodborne, Uncharted 4, Battlefield, Ratchet & Clank, games like those are going to be available for $20 at a budget price. These are called PlayStation Hits. Now, previously, this is an initiative Sony does with most of their consoles, which is considered their greatest hits catalog. They did greatest hits for PS1, PS2, PS3, PSP, and as to my knowledge, this never came to PlayStation Vita actually, or at least not in the West. But yeah, so this is actually going to be hitting stores pretty much right away. I'm always the kind of person that does not like the greatest hits catalog because, I mean, it's great for, budget price games and everything, but the OCD in me wants a regular blue case. I hate the red case. I famously got super, super pissed off when Grand Theft Auto San Andreas got a physical release on PS3, because obviously they did the slight remaster, you know what I mean, where it was the mobile version of the game that came to consoles, and right when that was available physically, it released immediately as a greatest hits game. So the only physical version of GTA San Andreas on PS3 is a greatest hits game, and that made me so angry. So one thing we learned from this past week in the midst of the E3 stuff going around is that Tetsuya Nomura, the game director for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, actually gave us an update on the project. And what's interesting is that he said the game's actually in development. And he also, and I quote here, he said, production's going well, and that it's actually going further along than expected. Now, the last time we talked about the Final Fantasy VII Remake was about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and the update wasn't that good, right? Basically, it was a heavy rumor suggesting that within the Japanese games industry, a lot of people were overhearing and found out that the 2 years that the developer CyberConnect 2 did on the Final Fantasy VII Remake wasn't shaping up all that well. Tetsuya Nomura was barely in the office, and he was heavily focusing on Kingdom Hearts 3, which sounds about right, considering we don't see much of the game at all, basically. And I'm maybe guessing here is that the recent, update that Tetsuya just gave us is the fact that, well, yeah, they just recently restarted production of the game, right? Because that was the rumor, was that they did 2 years of work, wasn't shaping up all that well, and basically had to scrap all that and kind of start from fresh. Maybe that's what he's talking about right now when he says the game's actually in development and that it's actually going well. They just restarted, and now they're, full steam ahead as they, spend the last few months finishing up Kingdom Hearts 3. Because that game finally has a release date, and we see a lot of trailers of it now, and the game's actually going to be released, so that they can kind of put more, more resources and more people, and of course Tetsuya's time himself, into Final Fantasy VII Remake. The one thing that I keep thinking about is that this game's still apparently episodic, which is, they're doing that too, 100% episodic. We're nearing the end of the console generation. I mean, you can't, is Episode 1 going to be on PS4 X1? Is this going to go and do multi-generational release? Or are you just going to, because, let's face it, the game's definitely going to be, at minimum 3 years out, and we all know it's probably going to take longer than that. This game's definitely going to have to get moved over to PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox. It's got to be, because it's going to be Episode 1. So, you know what I mean? This is too long-term of a project for it to come out on PS4 and Xbox One, or at the very least, in the sense of it not being released also for next generation. You know what I mean? Or it would be a cross-gen title. But that's what I keep thinking of. All right, now we got to talk about this. This crossplay thing, it's getting pretty heated. It's getting pretty serious, to be honest. I think there's a lot of eyes should be on this now, and I think the pressure really needs to be put on Sony to do the right thing here. But this, okay, so this is crazy. I mean, if you didn't see it, Nintendo released a trailer earlier this week for Minecraft crossplay, and what's crazy about this trailer is that it is a full-on collaboration with Microsoft entirely. It illustrates crossplay between Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. Now, I think it goes without saying, but we need to keep a little reminder here. Microsoft actually owns Minecraft developer Mojang, so this seems to, you know, I mean, it's not a total surprise, I guess. But Nintendo's been very forthcoming about it. They've been very supportive of the whole crossplay initiative. I mean, so we all know that Sony's the only one that's not playing nice here. And what's even more interesting is a recent tweet from John Smedley, who used to work at Sony Online Entertainment, but now they changed their name to Daybreak Games. This is the developer of like H1Z1. He used to be with Sony, right? So what he actually tweeted recently, and I quote here, the tweet's actually deleted, but he said, "By the way, when I was at Sony, the stated reason internally for this was money. They didn't like someone buying something on an Xbox and it being used on a PlayStation. Simple as that, dumb reason, but there it is." So this is, of course, in reference to why Sony is not doing crossplay. Sony wants to sell more PlayStations, and they just, you know, they've got market dominance at this point. Of course, it makes sense, and it's justified from their end, but again, like, long term, I think this is just terrible, and it's just really shitty for consumers. It's not what Sony's been preaching from day one with PlayStation 4, because we all know this conversation of how Sony dramatically changed their attitude with PlayStation 4. You know, they were very pro-consumer, and they were doing so many great things for the consumer, and they dramatically changed PS4. It was a far cry from what PlayStation 3 used to be. It was a machine for developers. It was a machine for independent developers. I mean, they were very friendly with everybody. They wanted people to get onto their platform, and of course, they wanted to make this thing affordable for most consumers to buy. They did great with it, and that's why they are where they are today. But you even remember initially with the whole used game controversy with Microsoft, and how Sony even openly made that shared games video, where at the time when Adam Boyes was with Sony, he handed a game over to Shuhei Yoshida, and he said that, you know, that's how you shared games on PS4. You know, that's not what Sony, like, that Sony used to preach that kind of stuff, and that's not what their attitudes change. That's not what they're doing today, and it's just not a good look. I mean, more people need to put more, there needs to be a huge fire under Sony's ass for this, you know? We need to keep applying pressure to them. This is not something that they want to be doing long-term for sure. This is just going to piss people off more and more, and it's going to move people off of Sony's platform. I mean, this is just, it's getting out of hand at this point. I mean, John Smedley pretty much confirms it. We all sort of knew that, but clearly the company is just dodging it left and right. I mean, Nintendo's on board, Microsoft's on board. Do the right thing here. It's just irritating. It's the right thing to do, I think. Again, long term. I mean, right now they don't have to do it, but watch, more and more games are going to come out, because obviously this is going to be full steam ahead with Microsoft and Nintendo, right? And of course, PC games are all going to support. The mobile's all going to support this. It's all going to be this floating ecosystem, and Sony's going to be the odd man out, and it's just going to alienate their consumers, and more people over time will move away from it. For our final news story, PlayStation Now, actually kind of somewhat big news here, but earlier this week somebody on Reddit noticed that on PlayStation Now they actually had a download option for their game. Now, hitting it actually didn't do anything, but this implies that, oh my god, could I actually download the PlayStation Now game and just play it offline? That's kind of the theory, right? Well, actually, an insider source close to the situation at Sony has informed Kotaku that this actually is a feature, and it's coming later in September, and it's coming initially for PlayStation 4 games. That's at least what the insider source says. Now, this is profoundly interesting for a number of things, all right? This would immediately be in direct competition with what Microsoft's doing with Xbox Game Pass, which a lot of people love. Actually, people are really enjoying Xbox Game Pass, and it would be great for Sony to offer something a little bit like that. I mean, now they kind of offer it with PlayStation Plus, but of course that's, you know, a handful of games every single month, and then they leave every single month. Xbox Game Pass is a more broader amount of titles that you can play. And of course, games get added and removed, but it's like 100 plus games at any given moment. Whereas PlayStation Now is a streaming service with 650 games. It's a lot more games, but it's a streaming service purely on that front. Now, here's the angle that I know a lot of people want to get at. And this is what and this makes sense too. If it comes in September, it'll be for PS4 games. Okay, right, because PlayStation 4 can play PlayStation 4 games. People want to see the PS3 games being downloaded. Now, this is where it could get really interesting, right? Because there's no way they can do that, is what I'm basically going to try and warn you guys about. The vast majority of PlayStation Now games are PS3 games. There's only a handful of PS4 games, and there's also PlayStation 2 games. The premium PS2 games that are available on the PlayStation Store to just buy and own. So ideally, you could also expect those, but again, the majority is PS3 games, and that's where everybody's going to be looking for that, right? Because that would totally get a lot of people on board, but they can't do that because PlayStation 4 does not have a PlayStation 3 emulator, and we've had this conversation numerous times. You know, if you've been here for a long time, you know it, but Sony in no way, shape, or form wants to invest the time, money, or resources into making a PS3 emulator work on PS4, likely because it's either too difficult, too costly, or just straight up not possible. This is what people still seem to be missing. And it was great that Microsoft was able to pull it off, but it was a little bit different for them with the Xbox 360 architecture and how Xbox One could handle it. The PlayStation 3 architecture was vastly more complicated to the point where so many developers struggled back in 2006 up to 2013 even. And we're all really around 2010 was when a lot of developers really started to come into their own with PS3 development, but for a long time, they had a really tough time making games on that platform. Even to this day, a super powerful PC has a very difficult time emulating PlayStation 3 games. PS4 is a great console, and I will always be the first person to say, a base PS4 still packs a lot of power. You know, in the current landscape that we live in, where PC gaming is on the rise and so many people are enjoying PC games, it's not a problem, but so many people are enjoying the great performance you get out of a PC, which is great, but that sort of devalues where consoles are. But in terms of the price to performance ratio, PS4 is still the base PS4 still produces very gorgeous looking games, but at the same time, a base PS4 would there's no way it's going to be able to emulate PS3 games. And again, if it even could, it's got to be way too costly, and there's got to be way too many resources going into it. So this rumor, while it sounds great, I would have to imagine it is definitely only for PS4 games initially, like this rumor implies, and it would only also come to the PS2 games that are available on PlayStation Now and on the PlayStation Store to buy, separately, right? It's got to be for that. There's no way this can be for PS3 games. If it was, I mean, that would be unbelievably fantastic news, but I would be shocked. There's just no way that's going to end up happening. And if it does, again, it's got to be like a few PS3 games at the most, you know what I mean? Like, because again, they could maybe do it for like a few games, but this, again, the time, resources, the money, or the fact of just how difficult it would be to pull off probably isn't worth it, and it's why Sony has not offered backwards compatibility with PlayStation 3, because it's just not on the cards. It's just something that they're not going to do. And Sony's even openly admitted this a handful of times. It's unfortunate for Sony because this was a decision they made back with the PS3 when they made the PlayStation 3. They kind of bit themselves in their ass here by making a console that's just ridiculously complicated, because long term now you can't offer PS3 games on later platforms. That's why they have PlayStation Now, not only to offer PS3 games, but to also long term go into a future where we could possibly be streaming our games, which a lot of publishers and manufacturers want to end up doing at some point. That's why Sony doubled down on PlayStation Now so early, so they could build that infrastructure for the 10, 20 years long term that the service will finally pick up steam once people are more comfortable streaming their games. But for now, offering a download button is great because people do love Xbox Game Pass, but again, it's definitely gotta only be for PS4 games. And if it is, that's great too. I mean, that's not really a bad thing. That would certainly justify, I think, a lot of people to finally be a little more interested in PlayStation Now. Because even if they join just for the PS4 games, it's also kind of an added bonus to stream those PS3 games. You know, because I've always been like one of the few people that will be pretty vocal. You know, PlayStation Now is not a bad deal. It's 650 plus games. If you got a stable internet connection, you can't really beat that. You know, it's a very huge catalog of games, but I understand the mental hurdle some people have over it, because streaming games just isn't ideal. I don't even really want to do it. I mean, I've tried PlayStation Now, and it works well, actually, but even that wouldn't be my first choice, you know? I mean, I hate downloading a digital game. Even if I own it, I would much prefer to have a physical game. And that's where a lot of people still are today if you're mostly playing on consoles. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. We'll find out once Sony wants to announce it. Maybe this will be something that you'd see at September. What's that lineup around? TGS? Yeah. Or Gamescom? I don't know. You know, they could announce it whenever. It probably might just be a press release on the PlayStation blog. But we'll see, and we'll find out more details about what it actually is. Those are some of the news stories that I want to talk about with you guys from this past week. So if you didn't see it, random video I did. The first Let's Play I ever did on this channel was Jak and Daxter. Very fitting, right? Because we all know I loved my Jak and Daxter. For some reason, I went back and found some funny moments from my very first Let's Play, and I did a little highlight of it. So you probably saw it on the channel. It's up there if you want to see it. Totally good. And once again, expect just some random ass video. I actually posted it on Twitter, a Twitter poll, to see what you guys want to see out of those uploads. So you'll probably see another one of those get uploaded later this week too. Probably around Tuesday or something. But anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Budecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.